Today is a transmission installation day, and to assist me putting this heavy hunk of metal into the car, I made a little cradle for my jack with some scrap metal. It's actually a bit higher than what I wanted, but it should help me. And what it does is it sits in there like that, and then we take the transmission, which sits in the cradle like that. You see, if you remember the yellow reference mark I made from yesterday, that's the balance point of the transmission. And this should, with a bit of fiddling about, it should enable me to a little bit easier to install the transmission, but we'll see. It might be a bit high, but I can always trim it down. Okay, so installing we will go. Okay, as you can see, after a huge struggle, I finally managed to get the transmission onto my jack cradle, which gives me a lot more options for manoeuvrability. You may also never notice the canvas strap around it. That's because what I had to do was, because the transmission was so heavy, I had to loop that canvas strap around it through the gearbox hole here, and then fasten it to a ratchet strap either side, and then pull it up and ratchet it tight so I could get the jack under it. But now that jack's actually on it, I can actually release this. It's not needed anymore. And that should give me a lot more options to install the gearbox. What I'll do now is I'll move it into position and try and get one of the bolts in. Oh, you can't see very much here. So now, see, on the balance point there, it's nicely angled. So what I'll do now is I'll push it up. You see I've got the dowels in there, which I had to shorten. I'll push it up and I'll try and get a bolt into it, and I'll come back to you. Right, the transmission is in. I do apologise for not giving you any video of the actual installation, but once it started going, if I would have stopped, I would have stopped. But a quick breakdown of what happened. The dowels that I put in, the cut-off bolts, which are in these holes up here, they worked very well. They helped me guide the transmission in to the correct slats, and it went in remarkably smoothly. The cradle I made, which isn't installed at the moment because I'm not using it, helped a lot. But though I did finish, at the moment the jack is only supporting the back of the transmission, so I can disconnect this lasso, which is the one I showed you before. I must admit I actually used this lasso more than I used the cradle that I made. Why? Because I could actually wiggle the jack. It's got one of these automatic raising handles, and it kept striking the side of the body. And became a bit of a pain in the arse trying to manoeuvre it in this confined space, so I could actually fit as well. So what I did was I hung once I got the motor initially in, the transmission initially in, I re-slung it from this thing, which fastens around here, as you can see. This enabled me to give the transmission some wiggle room and move it backwards and forwards far easier than with the jack in place. And it's not actually doing anything at the moment, so I can remove it, because the majority of the transmission bolts are in, though they do need to be tightened up. So what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to remove this strap. I'm going to tighten up the transmission bolts, and then I can start reinstalling the cross member. Which of course went here, and then that's it, the transmission is effectively reinstalled. One point I must point out when installing a transmission in this method, let's get this jack out of the way so I can manoeuvre. is this. Let me show you. When closing the transmission up with the engine, here, when closing this space up, the transmission and the engine, double check that nothing, bring your hand around the space, I did several times, just to check that none of these cables get trapped between the engine and the transmission, because not only will this cause closing problems, but it will of course crimp, bend and possibly cut the cables, which is not something you want to deal with when you just want to change a clutch. But fortunately to me, everything was free. I've had no more oil drips since I sealed that thing, so hopefully, fingers crossed, I might have stenched that oil drip. But I have a sneaky suspicion that the engine cleaner I used on the plate, on the area where I put the silicone, which is in here, I've got a feeling that engine cleaner might have damaged the real oil seal. Oh, I really hope not, because I'll have to go through all this again to replace the engine oil seal. In fact, I'll probably have to leave the transmission in and take the engine out. Something I can do, but more work. I just don't want to. So fingers crossed that the engine oil seal is okay. Alright, what I'll do at the moment is I'll start reassembling things, which is much the reverse of taking them out. And I will come back with any interesting points. Alright, well, as you can see, I've remounted the transmission crossmember, so the transmission is an engine unit effectively installed again. What I'm doing now is reinstalling some of the ancillaries, such as the reverse switch, it really goes up here. But we also need to reinstall the speedo cable back into its hole, like that, and reinstall the 10mm bolt. This is the hydraulic clutch connector. Now, one thing I should have done, which I really didn't do, and I really should have done, is replace the seal on the quick release connector for the hydraulic line, which is here. Hang on, I just tie it up out the way. Yeah. I really should have replaced the seal on this. I've completely forgotten. I haven't got one with me. And I need the truck tomorrow, so I'm going to have to install it with the old one. If it leaks, I'll install a new one. Let me just clean this up a bit. Right, if you remember when we uninstalled it, I mentioned the little white ring. This little sliding ring is it. And this is the one that you've got to, when it's up here like this, you've got to push it all the way back in like that to disengage the connectors. Disengage the little metal pins, which you can't see them on now, to disconnect the clutch. So what I'm going to do is now, I've never done this before, so let's see, I'm going to push this back in here. I don't know if it goes in a certain way or not, I don't know. Right, I heard something click. And it seems pretty secure now, so I guess that's installed. What I'll need to do a little bit later is to bleed the clutch using the bleed nipple here, which you got a better shot of in the earlier videos. That's only a 2-minute job, so that's no major problem. Okay, what I'll do next is, let's see, this is 3 installed here, and now I need to start installing the drive shaft. I must say it's actually going back together pretty quickly. Another thing I've got to do as well is I've got to change the gearbox engine oil. There's a note, drain the gearbox before you do this, of course, using this nut here. You drain it with this one, and when it's completely drained, you put this back in. You undo this one. On this Mazda gearbox, you keep putting in like 5 quarts of automatic transmission fluid into this one, and you want to put the gearbox oil in until it just begins to dribble from here. And once it's at level inside here, that's it. It's actually got the sufficient quantity inside. Okay, let me just start reinstalling the drive shaft from here to its centre mounting, and of course to the rear universal joint, which is over there somewhere. And once I've done that, I can reinstall the exhaust system. I also forgot to get the new gasket for this, which I'll have to get, but again that can be done later, it's no big problem. Okay. Progress update. Transmission's in, ancillaries are connected. As you can see, the catalytic converter is back in. Crossmember reinstalled. However, one thing I didn't do is I had to release the crossmember again because I couldn't get the catalytic converter past it. So that's maybe something worth keeping in mind. What's next? At the moment, I am currently installing the drive shaft. After I've done this, I will start to reinstall the starter motor, bleed the clutch, and then reconnect the gear shift lever. And that should pretty much be it, and we can give it a go and see what happens. One thing I have to do is, if you remember when I was doing the bell housing bolts, I said that one was missing. Well, actually there were two missing, and when I was reinstalling the bolts, I just kept putting bolts until the holes were filled. And of course, I went and used two bolts that were needed somewhere else, and they were the two bolts belonging to the drive shaft union here, which if you remember had these silly awkward little washers. So what I had to do was, with the dowels I made to help guide the gearbox in, I just welded two nuts on top, excuse me, to make myself two serviceable bolts, which seemed to do the job. The transmission components are now all installed, to the transmission at the end, and to the main U-joint here, to the sliding joint here. That's installed. I did actually put these bolts in upside down, if you see that. If you remember, they were the other way around when I uninstalled it, but it was much easier this way. So there we go. I know, they're the homemade bolts I made, by the way. Alright. I've also reinstalled the starter motor, complete with the earth strap, this one here. Very important you don't forget this strap, because all that current demanded by the initial start from the starter motor, if it is go through this strap connected more or less directly to the starter motor, it'll find some other way to go, somewhere through the wiring harness or through some sort of cable or wire connection. And if that cable isn't rated for the type of amperage, it will fry and probably seize, which just happened to me in the past, leading to exciting consequences with stuck accelerators. Right, so what I'm doing now is I'm bleeding the clutch. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this, but because this is a mainly vertical system, what I was thinking of doing it was like gravity feed. That basically means just opening the tap and letting the fluid run out, bringing the air with it, keeping an eye on the level in the reservoir at the top. This nut is kind of stiff here. This is kind of stiff. This is an 11mm spanner. A little trick that you can do if you get a nut that you can't turn with a spanner, get another spanner, a ring spanner, and just hook it over like that, you see? Then just use that as the lever to undo it. That's helping more than one situation, believe me. Right, I've got some protection here, so what I'll do is I'll open this, I'll see if anything will run out. Hoping it will. If not, it's going to have to be a pressure bleed, which is a different thing altogether. Is anything coming out of this? Oh yeah, there you go. We've got fluid running out of it now. Can you see it dripping down? Now in theory, this should bring the air with it. Right, I'll lock that up. Like that, and we'll check the reservoir.